My name is Sabrina, and I am 34 years old. 6 months ago, I lost both of my parents in a car accident. They left me everything they owned, including a piece of property I never knew existed. An abandoned factory in a small town called Millbrook, Pennsylvania. For 34 years, my parents never once mentioned this place. I thought it was just an old building with no value, until I found the locked room in the basement and everything I believed about my family fell apart. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if stories about family secrets and unexpected discoveries resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, what I found behind that locked door changed my entire understanding of who my parents really were. I grew up in a small town called Cedarville, Ohio. It was the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, where front porches had rocking chairs, and where summer evenings smelled like fresh-cut grass and barbecue smoke. My childhood, by all appearances, was perfectly ordinary. My father, Harold Jennings, worked as a freelance plumber. He was a quiet man with calloused hands and a gentle smile. He could fix anything from leaky faucets to broken hearts. My mother, Diane Jennings, worked part-time at the local library. She had this way of making everyone feel welcome, whether they were checking out a book or just stopping by to chat. She smelled like vanilla and old paper, and her laugh could fill an entire room. We lived in a modest two-bedroom house on Maple Street. The paint was always peeling a little, and the screen door squeaked no matter how many times Dad oiled it. But it was home. It was filled with love and warmth and the kind of security that makes a child believe the world is a safe place. I remember summer afternoons when Mom would sit on the back porch and read to me. She had this beautiful voice that could make even the most boring story sound like an adventure. I remember Dad teaching me how to ride a bike in our backyard, holding the seat until I found my balance, then letting go without telling me. I rode halfway across the yard before I realized he was not holding on anymore. When I turned around, he was standing there with the biggest grin on his face. We did not have much money, but we had enough. Dinner was simple, but always delicious. Mom made the best meatloaf in 3 counties, and Dad could grill a burger that would make your mouth water just thinking about it. We ate together every night at the same rickety kitchen table, talking about our days, laughing at silly jokes, just being a family. But looking back now, there were things that did not quite add up. Things I was too young and too happy to notice. My parents never talked about their pasts. When I asked about my grandparents, they would get this faraway look in their eyes and say something vague like, "They passed away a long time ago, sweetheart, before you were born." When I asked if we had any other relatives, aunts or uncles or cousins, they would shake their heads and change the subject. There were no wedding photos hanging on our walls, no albums filled with pictures from their younger days, no old friends who came to visit reminiscing about college or high school or childhood adventures. My parents existed only in the present, as if they had sprung into being the moment they became my parents. I never questioned it. Why would I had everything a child could want. I had parents who loved me, a roof over my head, food on the table, and the unshakable belief that my family was exactly what it appeared to be. I went to college at Ohio State, studied accounting, graduated with honors. I got a job at a mid-sized accounting firm in Columbus. I moved into a small apartment, adopted a cat named Biscuit, and settled into the comfortable routine of adulthood. I called my parents every Sunday night, visited them on holidays, and assumed that life would continue this way forever. Then, 6 months ago, I got the phone call that shattered everything. It was a Tuesday evening. I had just gotten home from work, was still in my business clothes, feeding Biscuit his dinner. My phone rang with a number I did not recognize. A Pennsylvania area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Miss Jennings." The voice on the other end was professional detached. "This is Sergeant Williams with the Pennsylvania State Police. I'm calling about Harold and Diane Jennings." My heart stopped. Time stopped. The world narrowed to that single voice coming through my phone. There had been an accident on Interstate 80. A semi-truck had lost control, crossed the median, and collided head-on with my parents' car. They were killed instantly. No suffering, the sergeant assured me, as if that was supposed to make it better. No suffering. Just there one moment and gone the next. I do not remember much about the days that followed. I remember dropping my phone. I remember Biscuit meowing at my feet, confused by the sound coming out of my mouth, that primal wail that did not sound human. I remember calling my boss, my voice shaking so badly I could barely form words. I remember driving to Pennsylvania in a fog, identifying their bodies, signing paperwork, making arrangements. The funeral was small and quiet. A few of my coworkers came. Some neighbors from Cedarville. My parents' few acquaintances from church and the library. But no family. No old friends. No one who had known them longer than the decade or so they had lived in Cedarville. I stood at their graves, watching the caskets lower into the ground, and felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. I was 34 years old, and I had no one left. No siblings, no grandparents, no aunts or uncles. Just me and a cat, and a small apartment in Columbus. I thought that was the end of the story. I thought I would grieve, heal, and eventually move on with my life, carrying my parents' memory in my heart. I had no idea that the real story was just beginning. 3 weeks after the funeral, I received a call from a man named Gerald Patterson. He introduced himself as an attorney based in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, and explained that my parents had retained his services several years ago to handle their estate. I was confused. My parents had never mentioned having an attorney. They had never mentioned Millbrook. As far as I knew, they had no connection to Pennsylvania at all beyond the cruel twist of fate that had taken them there on that final drive. "Miss Jennings," Mr. Patterson said in his measured, formal tone, "your parents left a will, and you are the sole beneficiary. I think it would be best if you came to my office to discuss the details in person." A week later, I found myself sitting in a small law office on Main Street in Millbrook. The town was nothing like I expected. It had clearly seen better days. Half the storefronts on the main drag were empty, their windows dusty and dark. The buildings were old, the paint faded, the sidewalks cracked. This was a town that industry had built and then abandoned. Mr. Patterson was a tall, thin man in his 60s with silver hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. His office smelled like leather and old books. He handed me a folder containing my parents' will and began to explain its contents. The house in Cedarville was mine, of course. I expected that. There was also a savings account containing $42,000. That surprised me. I knew my parents had been frugal, but I had no idea they had managed to save that much. And then Mr. Patterson mentioned the third item, an industrial property located at 1847 Industrial Way, Millbrook, Pennsylvania. A factory that my parents had purchased over 30 years ago and held ever since. I stared at him. A factory. My parents owned a factory. He nodded. Whitmore Manufacturing. It has been closed for over 2 decades, but your parents maintained ownership of the property and paid the taxes every year. It is yours now. Nothing made sense. My father was a plumber. My mother was a librarian. How could they possibly have afforded to buy a factory? And why would they want one? Why keep it secret for 30 years? Did they ever say why they bought it? I asked. Did they ever come here to visit it? Mr. Patterson shook his head. I only handled the paperwork, Miss Jennings. Your parents were very private people. They never discussed their reasons with me. He handed me a set of keys. 3 keys on a plain metal ring. 1 for the main gate, 1 for the building entrance, and 1 for the front office. I turned them over in my hands, feeling their weight, wondering what secrets they might unlock. After leaving Mr. Patterson's office, I drove to 1847 Industrial Way. The address took me to the edge of town, past rows of abandoned warehouses and overgrown lots. The industrial district had clearly been the heart of Millbrook once, but that heart had stopped beating long ago. The factory stood at the end of a crumbling asphalt road surrounded by a rusted iron fence. It was a 3-story brick building, its walls covered in climbing vines, its windows broken or boarded up. A faded sign above the main entrance read, "Whitmore Manufacturing," in letters that had once been red but had weathered to a dull pink. I got out of my car and stood at the gate staring up at the building. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the empty parking lot. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed. This place had been sitting here silent and forgotten for my entire life. And my parents had owned it the whole time. They had paid taxes on it, maintained ownership, kept it secret. Why, I felt a strange pull toward the building. A sense that it was waiting for me, that it had answers I did not even know I was looking for. But it was getting dark, and I was exhausted from the drive. I decided to come back tomorrow when I had time to explore properly. I found a small motel on the outskirts of town, checked into a room with thin walls and a mattress that sagged in the middle, and lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling thinking about my parents and the secrets they had kept. The next morning I returned to the factory with a flashlight, a notebook, and a determination to understand what this place meant. The main gate creaked loudly when I unlocked it and pushed it open. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds, but I could still see the faded lines where workers had once parked their cars. I imagined this place full of life, full of people coming and going, machines humming, trucks loading and unloading. Now it was silent as a tomb. The front door was heavy and took some effort to open. The hinges groaned in protest, and a gust of stale air rushed out to greet me. I stepped inside and found myself in a large entrance hall, its floor covered in debris and dust. A reception desk sat against one wall, its surface buried under years of accumulated dirt. An old clock hung above it, its hands frozen at 10:47. I clicked on my flashlight and began to explore. The ground floor was the manufacturing area. Rows of old machinery stood silent and still, their metal surfaces coated with rust. Conveyor belts had rotted away, leaving only their metal frames. Stacks of wooden pallets had collapsed into piles of decaying lumber. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay and the peculiar metallic tang of old machinery. I picked my way through the debris, carefully watching for weak spots in the floor. Every step kicked up dust that swirled in the beam of my flashlight. It was like walking through a photograph from another era, frozen in time the moment the factory closed its doors. I found a staircase and climbed to the second floor. This was the administrative level. A long hallway lined with offices, their doors hanging open or missing entirely. I explored each one, finding dusty desks, moldering filing cabinets, ancient typewriters with rusted keys. The papers I found were mundane. Invoices, shipping manifests, production reports. Nothing that explained why my parents had owned this place. The name on the building still bothered me. Whitmore Manufacturing. My father's name was Jennings. My mother's maiden name was Carter. Neither of them had any connection to anyone named Whitmore that I knew of. So, who was Whitmore, and why had my parents bought their factory? I climbed to the third floor and found it filled with storage. Cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling, old furniture draped in sheets, filing cabinets, and shelves loaded with records going back to the 1960s. I spent an hour going through boxes, finding old photographs of workers I did not recognize, company picnics from decades past, award certificates, and safety posters. In one box, I found a company newsletter from 1975. The cover showed a group photo of the entire workforce standing proudly in front of the factory. Over 200 people, according to the caption. I studied their faces, looking for anyone familiar, but they were all strangers to me. I was about to give up and head back downstairs when I decided to do one more sweep of the ground floor. I had been thorough, I thought, but maybe I had missed something. That is when I found the door. It was in the far corner of the manufacturing area, hidden behind a row of old machines that I had walked past without really looking at them. The door was made of heavy steel painted gray with a deadbolt lock that looked surprisingly new compared to everything else in the building. I tried each of the 3 keys Mr. Patterson had given me. None of them fit. I shined my flashlight at the lock, examining it closely. It was definitely newer than the rest of the building. Someone had replaced it within the last few years. The metal was not rusted, the mechanism still smooth and clean. Beyond the door, I could see the top of a staircase leading down into darkness. A basement. The factory had a basement, and someone had gone to the trouble of securing it with a new lock. My heart began to beat faster. Why would someone lock a basement in an abandoned factory? What were they trying to keep people out of? Or a more unsettling thought, what were they trying to keep in? I pulled on the door, but it did not budge. I examined the frame, looking for a way to force it open, but it was solid steel set into a concrete wall. Without the right key or some serious tools, I was not getting through. I stepped back, my mind racing. My parents had owned this factory for over 30 years. They had paid to maintain it, even though it was abandoned. And now I find a basement door with a new lock, and my keys do not work. Someone had been here. Someone had changed that lock, and given that my parents had owned the property, that someone was probably them. What were they hiding down there? I drove back to the motel, my thoughts swirling. That night I could not sleep. I kept seeing that door in my mind, imagining what might be behind it. Documents. Money, something valuable. Something dangerous. I knew I would not have peace until I found out. The next morning I decided to take a different approach. If I wanted to understand why my parents had bought this factory, I needed to understand its history. And the best place to start was the local library. The Millbrook Public Library was a small brick building on Oak Street just off the main square. It smelled like old books and lemon furniture polish, and the elderly librarian behind the desk looked up with surprise when I walked in. I got the impression she did not see many visitors. I explained that I was researching Whitmore Manufacturing and asked if they had any local history archives. Her eyes lit up with interest. "The Whitmores," she said, nodding slowly. "Now, that is a name I have not heard in a while. Let me show you what we have." She led me to a back room filled with filing cabinets and microfiche machines. For the next several hours, I dug through old newspapers, town records, and archived documents, piecing together the history of the factory and the family that had built it. Whitmore Manufacturing was founded in 1962 by Eugene Whitmore, a local businessman who had grown up in Millbrook. He started small, making electronic components in a converted warehouse, but the business grew rapidly through the 60s and 70s. By 1975, the factory employed over 200 people and was the largest employer in the county. Eugene Whitmore was described in the papers as a pillar of the community. He donated to local charities, sponsored the Little League team, and served on the town council. His wife, Marjorie, was active in the church and the garden club. They had 2 children, a son named Arthur and a daughter named Eleanor. The family seemed perfect. Wealthy, respected, beloved. The American dream incarnate. And then I found the articles from November 1987. Tragedy strikes. Whitmore family fire claims 2 lives. The article described how a fire had broken out at the Whitmore family home in the early hours of November 23rd. Eugene and Marjorie Whitmore were killed in the blaze. The house was destroyed completely. Investigators found evidence suggesting the fire was not accidental. Traces of accelerant were discovered. The case was classified as suspected arson. But no one was ever arrested. The investigation went cold. And the 2 Whitmore children, Arthur and Eleanor, inherited the family business and property. I found another article from a few weeks later. Whitmore heirs sell family business, leave town. Arthur and Eleanor had sold the factory to a holding company and left Millbrook. No forwarding address, no explanation. They simply vanished. And then 6 months later, according to property records I found in the town archives, the factory was purchased by Harold and Diane Jennings. My parents. I sat back in my chair, my head spinning. My parents had bought the factory within a year of the fire that killed the Whitmores. That could not be a coincidence. They must have had some connection to the family, some reason for wanting the property. But what connection could a plumber and a librarian have to a wealthy industrial family in Pennsylvania? I kept searching, looking for any mention of my parents' names in the Millbrook records. But there was nothing. No Harold Jennings, no Diane Carter. They had no documented history in this town before buying the factory. Then I found a photograph. It was in a newspaper article from 1985, 2 years before the fire. A Society page feature about a charity gala hosted by the Whitmore family. The photo showed Eugene and Marjorie Whitmore with their 2 children. I stared at the image. At Eugene, stern and silver-haired. At Marjorie, elegant in pearls. At Arthur, tall and serious-looking with cold eyes. And at Eleanor. Eleanor. She was 19 in this photo. Slender with long, dark hair and blue eyes. A gentle smile that did not quite reach her eyes. And a face that I knew as well as my own. Because Eleanor Whitmore looked exactly like my mother. Not similar. Not resembling. Identical. The same eyes, the same smile, the same way of holding her head. If I had not known better, I would have sworn I was looking at a photograph of my mother at 19. My hands trembled as I held the newspaper. My heart pounded in my ears. This could not be right. My mother was Diane Carter. She grew up in Indiana. She met my father at a county fair. That was the story I had been told my whole life. But stories can be lies. And the face in this photograph did not lie. I left the library in a daze, my mind reeling with questions I did not know how to answer. If my mother was Eleanor Whitmore, why had she changed her name? Why had she run away from her family and her fortune? And what did any of this have to do with the fire that killed her parents? I needed more information. I needed to talk to someone who had actually known the Whitmore family. The librarian, Mrs. Henderson, had mentioned that a few old-timers in town still remembered the Whitmores. She gave me a name. Edith Monroe. She had been Eugene Whitmore's secretary for 20 years right up until the fire. I found Mrs. Monroe living in a small cottage on the edge of town surrounded by rose bushes that had seen better days. She was 82 years old, small and frail, with white hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. When I knocked on her door and explained that I was researching the Whitmore family, she studied me for a long moment before nodding slowly. "You had better come inside," she said. "I have been waiting a long time for someone to come asking questions." Her cottage was small but tidy, filled with antique furniture and old photographs. She made tea in a chipped porcelain pot and settled into an armchair across from me, her hands wrapped around her cup for warmth. "So," she said, "you want to know about the Whitmores. May I ask why?" I hesitated. Then I decided to tell her the truth, or at least part of it. "My parents recently passed away. They left me the old factory. I'm trying to understand why they owned it." Mrs. Monroe's eyes narrowed. "Your parents. What were their names?" "Harold and Diane Jennings." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she set down her teacup and leaned forward. "I never knew them by those names. But I knew them. Or at least I knew her." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" "Your mother, dear. She was not Diane Jennings, was she? She was Eleanor Whitmore." The room seemed to spin. I gripped the arms of my chair to steady myself. "How did you know?" "Because I remember Eleanor. I watched her grow up. I saw her every day for years coming and going from the factory with her father. And because you look just like her, the same eyes, the same bone structure, I knew the moment I saw you on my doorstep." Tears pricked at my eyes. Please tell me everything you know." Mrs. Monroe nodded slowly and began to speak. Eugene Whitmore was a complicated man. To the outside world, he was a success story, a self-made businessman who built an empire from nothing. But inside his own family, he was a tyrant. He controlled everything. His wife, his children, every aspect of their lives. Nothing happened in that house without his approval. She paused, taking a sip of tea. Marjorie, his wife, was a broken woman. Beautiful and elegant, but completely under his thumb. She never contradicted him, never stood up for herself or her children. I think she was afraid of him. We all were a little. "And the children?" I asked. Arthur was the golden boy. He took after his father. Cold, calculating, always thinking about money and power, Eugene groomed him to take over the business. Arthur soaked it all up like a sponge. By the time he was 20, he was almost as ruthless as his father. And Eleanor. Mrs. Monroe's expression softened. Eleanor was different. Sensitive kind, gentle. She had her mother's beauty, but none of her weakness. She had spirit, that girl. She used to volunteer at the library, help out at the animal shelter. She wanted nothing to do with the factory or the family business. And that drove Eugene crazy. She shook her head sadly. He was hard on her. Harder than on Arthur, even though Arthur was the one being trained to take over. It was like Eleanor's goodness offended him somehow. He criticized everything she did. Nothing was ever good enough. There were rumors about worse things, raised voices, bruises, but nobody ever confirmed anything. "You said you knew my father, too," I said, "or the man who became my father." Mrs. Monroe nodded. "James. That was his name back then. James Cooper. He worked at the factory as a machinist. Young, handsome, hard-working. And he fell in love with Eleanor the moment he saw her." "What happened?" "They tried to keep it secret. They knew Eugene would never approve. A machinist and the boss's daughter, unthinkable. But love is hard to hide. Someone saw them together and reported back to Eugene." Her eyes grew sad. Eugene was furious. He fired James on the spot, had security escort him off the property like a criminal. And then he went home and punished Eleanor. I do not know exactly what happened that night, but Eleanor did not come to work for a week afterward. When she finally did, she had a cast on her wrist. She said she fell down the stairs. I felt sick to my stomach. My grandfather, a man I had never known, had hurt my mother, had broken her wrist, and no one had done anything to stop it. James left town. Mrs. Monroe continued. He did not have a choice. Eugene made it clear that he would destroy anyone who helped them. But James and Eleanor did not stop loving each other. They found ways to communicate. Secret letters, I think. They were planning something. Planning what? To run away together. Eleanor told me the last time I saw her, the night before the fire. She was scared but determined. She said she was leaving that night and never coming back. She thanked me for being kind to her all those years, and then she hugged me and walked out the door. Mrs. Monroe's voice trembled. The next morning I heard about the fire. Eugene and Marjorie were dead. The house was destroyed, and Eleanor was gone. The police questioned Arthur, but he had an alibi. He was at a friend's house all night. They questioned Eleanor too, but she had an alibi as well. She said she was staying with a girlfriend. But she was not. No, she was with James. They ran away that night just like she planned, and they never came back. I sat in silence, processing everything I had just heard. My mother had escaped an abusive home, run away with the man she loved, changed her name, and started a new life. She had left behind her wealth, her family, her entire identity. And she had never told me any of it. "Do you think Eleanor had anything to do with the fire?" I asked, dreading the answer. Mrs. Monroe was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "No, I do not believe Eleanor could have hurt anyone. But someone set that fire. Someone wanted Eugene and Marjorie dead." "Who?" She looked at me with those sharp blue eyes. I have always had my suspicions, but suspicions are not proof, and some secrets are dangerous to uncover. "Please, I need to know." Mrs. Monroe sighed. "Arthur stood to inherit everything when his parents died. The factory, the fortune, all of it. As long as Eleanor was out of the picture, which she would be if she ran away and never came back, everything would go to him. You think Arthur killed his own parents? I think Arthur was capable of anything. And I think it is no coincidence that the fire happened on the exact night Eleanor was planning to run away. Someone knew about her plan. Someone used it to their advantage." I left Mrs. Monroe's cottage with my head spinning and my heart aching. My mother had been a victim, not a criminal. She had escaped a nightmare, built a new life, raised me with love and kindness. And she had kept all of this buried inside her, never telling a soul, carrying the weight of her past alone. But if Arthur had killed their parents, he had gotten away with it. He had inherited everything, sold the factory, and disappeared. And my mother had spent the rest of her life running from the shadow of that night. I needed to know more. I needed to find out what was behind that locked door in the basement, because I was certain now that my parents had not just bought a factory. They had bought evidence. They had bought leverage. They had bought some kind of protection. And whatever it was still down there waiting for me to find it. The next morning, I went to the hardware store on Main Street and bought a heavy-duty bolt cutter. The clerk gave me a curious look but did not ask any questions. I drove back to the factory with a sense of purpose that bordered on obsession. I was going to open that door. I was going to find out what my parents had hidden, and I was finally going to understand the truth about my family. The factory was just as silent and empty as before, but it felt different now. Less like an abandoned building and more like a vault filled with secrets that had been locked away for over 30 years. I made my way to the basement door, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous manufacturing space. The bolt cutter was heavy in my hands. I positioned the blades around the shackle of the lock and squeezed. The metal resisted for a moment, then gave way with a sharp snap. The lock fell to the ground with a clatter. I pushed open the door, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. I took a deep breath and started down. The staircase was steep and narrow, made of concrete that had cracked with age. My flashlight illuminated each step as I descended, revealing walls of bare brick and pipes that ran along the ceiling. The air grew cooler as I went deeper, carrying a faint, musty smell. At the bottom of the stairs, I found myself in a small room, maybe 200 square feet. And, unlike the rest of the factory, this room was clean. Not spotless, but clearly maintained. Someone had been down here recently. Someone had swept the floor, organized the contents, kept the dust at bay. A desk sat against one wall, an old wooden thing with a leather chair. A filing cabinet stood next to it. A small safe sat in the corner. And cardboard boxes, lined up neatly against the opposite wall. My heart pounded as I approached the desk. There were papers scattered across its surface, held in place by a glass paperweight. I picked up the top sheet and began to read. It was a letter, written in my mother's handwriting. My dearest Sabrina, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have found this place. I always hoped you never would. I hoped I would have the courage to tell you the truth myself before it was too late. But if you are reading this, then my courage failed me, and I am sorry. There are things about my life, about your father's life, that we never told you. We kept these secrets not to deceive you, but to protect you, to give you the childhood we never had, a childhood free from fear, free from darkness, free from the weight of the past. But you deserve to know the truth, and so I have left it here in this room, waiting for the day when you might need to find it. My hands trembled as I continued reading. My mother's letter explained everything. Her real name, her family, the abuse she had suffered, her escape with James, the man who became my father, their new identities, their new life. And then she wrote about the night of the fire. We did not know what Arthur was planning. I swear to you, Sabrina, we did not know. We were so focused on escaping, on getting away before Father could stop us, that we never imagined anyone else had plans of their own. James picked me up at midnight, just like we arranged. We drove through the night, putting as many miles as we could between us and Millbrook. We did not hear about the fire until the next day when we stopped at a diner for breakfast and saw it on the news. My parents were dead. My home was destroyed. And everyone was looking for me. At first, I wanted to go back. I wanted to tell the police that I had nothing to do with it, that I was miles away when it happened. But James convinced me to wait. He said the timing was too suspicious. He said Arthur would find a way to pin it on us. He said we needed to disappear completely, start over somewhere no one would ever find us. And so we did. I became Diane Carter. James became Harold Jennings. We moved to Ohio, got married, built a life. And then we had you, and everything changed. Suddenly, we had something to protect, someone to protect. And we knew we could never go back. But I always suspected Arthur. He was the only one who knew about our plan to run away. I had told him foolishly, hoping he might help us. Instead, he must have seen an opportunity. If I disappeared on the same night our parents died, the police would focus on me. And while they were chasing a ghost, he would be free and clear to inherit everything. I spent years gathering evidence. Bank records, witness statements, anything that might prove what Arthur had done. Your father helped me. We bought the factory because we knew Arthur had left documents here, things he thought were hidden safely away. We found them. We kept them. Insurance in case he ever came looking for us. But he never did. He changed his name, moved to Florida, built a new life of his own. As far as I know, he thinks Eleanor Whitmore died in that fire along with her parents. He has no idea I am still alive, no idea you exist. I never went to the police with what we found. I was afraid they would not believe me, afraid Arthur would find out and come after us, afraid of losing you, losing the life we had built. So I kept silent. I let a murderer go free, and that is something I will have to answer for when I meet my maker. But you do not have to make the same choice I did. The evidence is here, Sabrina. Everything we gathered over the years. Bank records showing Arthur withdrew a large sum of money just before the fire. A statement from a hardware store employee who sold him kerosene and matches. A letter Arthur wrote to an associate referencing his plans for the night of November 23rd. It is enough to reopen the case. Enough to bring him to justice. But only if you want to. Only if you are willing to face the storm that will follow. Whatever you decide, know that I love you. Your father loves you. Everything we did for you. Your mother, Eleanor. I sat down heavily in the leather chair, the letter clutched in my hands. Tears streamed down my face, but I did not wipe them away. I let them fall. My mother had carried this burden for over 30 years. My father had stood by her side, helping her hide, helping her gather evidence, helping her protect me from a truth she thought would destroy me. And Arthur Whitmore, my uncle, a man whose blood ran through my veins, had murdered my grandparents and let my mother take the blame. I opened the filing cabinet and found it full of documents. Bank records, just like my mother said. Witness statements. A photocopied receipt from a hardware store. And a letter in Arthur's handwriting discussing plans for November 23rd in vague but damning terms. In the safe, I found more. Newspaper clippings, police reports, a private investigator's file that my parents must have commissioned at some point, and a current photograph of Arthur Whitmore, now going by the name Richard Donovan, living in a gated community in Naples, Florida. A successful businessman, a respected member of his community, a murderer. I spent hours in that basement reading through everything my parents had collected. By the time I emerged, the sun was setting and I knew exactly what I had to do. I was not going to let Arthur Whitmore get away with this anymore. Not for my grandparents whom I had never known. Not for my mother who had lived in fear her whole life. And not for myself, because I deserved to know that justice could still exist in this world. Arthur Whitmore was going to pay for what he did, and I was going to make sure of it. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. I took a leave of absence from work, extended my stay in Pennsylvania, and threw myself into the task of bringing Arthur Whitmore to justice. My first step was to consult with a lawyer. I found a criminal attorney in Philadelphia named Margaret Margaret Sullivan, who specialized in cold cases. I showed her everything I had found in the basement. She reviewed the evidence, carefully asked probing questions, and finally leaned back in her chair with a thoughtful expression. "This is compelling," she said. "Not enough for a conviction on its own, but definitely enough to reopen the investigation. The combination of the financial records, the witness statements, and the letter could establish probable cause. If the police can find additional evidence, or if we can get Arthur Richard, whoever he is, to make some kind of admission, we might have a real case. What do I need to do? First, we need to bring this to the Pennsylvania State Police. They handled the original investigation. They will want to see everything you have. Then, depending on what they find, they may coordinate with Florida law enforcement to bring him in for questioning. I filed a formal request to reopen the investigation. The detective assigned to the case was a woman named Patricia Morales, sharp-eyed and meticulous. She treated me with professional courtesy but made no promises. Cold cases are difficult, Miss Jennings. Evidence degrades. Witnesses die or forget. But I will tell you this, your parents did good work. This is more than we had 30 years ago. I cannot guarantee an arrest, but I can guarantee we will take this seriously. While the investigation proceeded, I made a decision that surprised even myself. I was going to confront Arthur, not to threaten him or accuse him, but to look him in the eye, to let him know that Eleanor Whitmore had a daughter, that she had never forgotten what he did, that his past was finally catching up with him. I flew to Florida on a Thursday morning. I had found Arthur Richards' business address through public records. He ran a consulting firm from an office building in downtown Naples. I did not call ahead. I did not want to give him time to prepare. The office was sleek and modern, all glass and chrome. A receptionist greeted me with a practiced smile. "I am here to see Mr. Donovan," I said. "My name is Sabrina Jennings. Tell him I am Eleanor Whitmore's daughter." The receptionist's smile faltered. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, and then looked up at me with uncertainty. "Mr. Donovan will see you. Third-floor corner office." I took the elevator up, my heart pounding. The hallway was silent, carpeted in expensive wool. The corner office had a mahogany door with a brass nameplate, Richard Donovan, President. I knocked once and entered. He was standing behind his desk, a tall man in his 70s with silver hair and cold blue eyes. He had aged well, but there was something hollow about him, something empty. "Close the door," he said quietly. I did. We stood there for a long moment studying each other. He was looking for Eleanor in my face, I knew, and he found her. I could see the recognition dawn in his eyes, followed quickly by fear. "You look just like her," he said finally. "I know. I thought she was dead. I thought she died in the fire." "That is what you wanted everyone to think." I kept my voice calm, though my hands were trembling. "That is why you set the fire on the night you knew she was running away. You wanted her to take the blame." His jaw tightened. "I do not know what you are talking about." "Yes, you do. My parents spent 30 years gathering evidence, bank records, witness statements, your own letters. I have all of it, and so do the Pennsylvania State Police." The color drained from his face. He gripped the edge of his desk as if to steady himself. "You cannot prove anything." "Maybe not, but I can make sure everyone knows who you really are, what you really did. Arthur Whitmore, who murdered his own parents for money, who let his sister live in fear and exile for the rest of her life, who built his fortune on blood and lies." I stepped closer, meeting his eyes without flinching. "My mother is dead now. My father, too. You cannot hurt them anymore. But I wanted you to know that she never forgot. She never forgave. And neither will I." I turned and walked toward the door. "Wait," he called out. His voice was strained, desperate. "What do you want, money? I can give you money. I can make this go away." I stopped but did not turn around. "There is nothing you can give me that would make up for what you took. My mother spent her whole life hiding from you. My grandparents died because of you, and you have been living free this whole time while they suffered." I opened the door. "I do not want your money. I want justice, and I am going to get it." I walked out of that office and did not look back. 3 months later, Arthur Whitmore, also known as Richard Donovan, was arrested at his home in Naples, Florida. He was extradited to Pennsylvania and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of arson. The evidence my parents had gathered, combined with new forensic analysis and witness interviews, was enough to convince a grand jury to indict. The trial lasted 6 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery watching as the prosecutor laid out the case against my uncle. The hardware store receipt, the bank records, the damning letter. A former associate who finally agreed to testify about conversations Arthur had made about wanting his parents out of the way. Arthur's defense team tried everything. They attacked the age of the evidence. They questioned the credibility of witnesses. They painted my mother as the real suspect, a jealous daughter who had fled out of guilt. But the jury did not buy it. After 2 days of deliberation, they returned a verdict of guilty on all counts. Arthur Whitmore was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the judge read the sentence, I watched his face. He looked old and broken, nothing like the powerful businessman he had pretended to be. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. After the trial, I returned to Millbrook one last time. I walked through the factory, empty now, but no longer threatening. I went down to the basement room where my mother had hidden her secrets and stood there in the silence, feeling her presence all around me. She had spent her whole life running, hiding, afraid. But she had also gathered the tools I would need to set things right. She had prepared for this moment even if she never lived to see it. "I did it, Mom," I whispered into the darkness. "I found the truth. I got justice. You can rest now?" I sold the factory eventually, but not to developers. I sold it to the city of Millbrook for $1 on the condition that they convert it into a community center. The Eleanor and James Community Center named for my parents the names they were born with, not the names they hid behind. It took time to heal. There were nights when I woke up crying, nights when the weight of everything I had learned pressed down on me like a physical force. I joined a support group for people who had lost parents. I made friends who understood grief, who did not try to fix me or rush me through my pain. I learned to hold two truths at the same time. My parents had lied to me, and my parents had loved me more than anything in the world. Both things were true. Both things mattered. I learned that secrets are not always deceptions. Sometimes they are shields. My parents had shielded me from a past that could have destroyed my childhood, could have filled my life with fear and paranoia. They gave me normalcy. They gave me safety. They gave me the chance to grow up believing the world was good. And when I was strong enough, when I was ready, they gave me the truth. They left it waiting for me locked in a basement room, trusting that I would find it when I needed to. I visit their graves now, both the ones in Ohio where we buried them and the symbolic markers I placed in the Millbrook Cemetery for Eleanor and James. I talk to them sometimes, telling them about my life, my job, the little things that would have made them smile. I tell them that I understand now. I tell them that I forgive them. I tell them that I am proud to be their daughter. And sometimes when the wind is just right and the sun is warm on my face, I swear I can feel them with me still. My parents left me an abandoned factory, but what they really left me was something far more valuable. They left me the truth about who they were and who I am. They left me the courage to face injustice and fight for what is right. They left me the knowledge that love can survive anything, even 30 years of silence and fear. That locked room changed everything, but not because of the secrets it contained. It changed everything because it showed me that my parents, flawed and frightened as they were, had never stopped trying to protect me. Even from beyond the grave, they were still looking out for me, still guiding me toward the light. And that is the greatest inheritance anyone could ever receive. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered something about your family that completely changed your understanding of who they were? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories matter to me. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next story. And remember, no matter what secrets your family might be hiding, love is always stronger than fear. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this community. Until next time, take care of